think back maybe 10 years. Did you accurately predict exactly how your industry was going to change?
I mean, probably not, right? Very few people do.
Right. And today, the hype around AI is just deafening. The fear of missing out is incredibly real for pretty much everyone listening.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why our mission for this deep dive is to sort of cut through all that noise. We want to give you a practical framework to actually future-proof your career and your business.
Exactly. So today we are diving into some really fascinating concepts from artificial intelligence. Rethinking Business Strategy by Teresa Martín-Retortillo.
But we're making sure to look right past all the technical jargon, right? We want to uncover the underlying economics and the real strategic shifts of this AI era.
Yeah, because this is really all about the concept of strategic foresight. And I think it's vital to establish up front that this isn't about perfectly predicting the future.
No, not at all. I mean, anyone claiming they have a crystal ball for AI is just trying to sell you something?
Exactly. Strategic foresight is about preparing for the future, by understanding the deeper forces that are shaping it right now.
Right. But before we can explore all the wild, unpredictable what-ifs of AI, we really have to establish what we actually know for sure.
Yeah, we need some anchor points. So how do we even start to look at what's coming without just, completely guessing?
Well, the source introduces a mental model called the futures cone. Basically, when businesses plan for the next few years, they usually just look at the probable future.
Like extrapolating current trends.
Exactly. They take last year's sales figures and just, draw a straight line slightly upward. But true foresight requires looking wider at what we call plausible futures.
Which means things that might seem a bit radical today, but are actually scientifically and economically possible.
Yes, exactly. And the classic example here is Shell Oil in 1985.
Oh, this story from the source is fascinating. So oil was sitting pretty at $28 a barrel. But Shell's internal planning group made their leadership run this stress test.
Right. They asked, what if the price of oil suddenly plummeted to $16 a barrel?
Which at the time sounded absolutely preposterous to anyone in the energy sector. It would just destroy their financial models.
It was basically asking them to plan for the end of the world, but they did it anyway. They designed cheaper, more efficient oil platforms just as a contingency.
And then April 1986 happens. Oil doesn't just drop to $16, it completely crashes to $10 a barrel.
Yeah, a total market shock.
But while all their competitors were blindsided and panicking, Shell just calmly pulled those new designs off the shelf. They survived because they had practiced a memory of the future.
I love that phrase, memory of the future.
It's like standard business planning is checking a weather app, seeing an 80% chance of rain, and grabbing an umbrella. That's your probable future.
Right.
But strategic foresight is designing your house to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. You have no idea if a hurricane will actually hit, but it's plausible. And if it does, your house is the only one left standing.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And, to build that hurricane-proof house, we need to pour a solid foundation first. We have to look at the known knowns.
The predetermined variables. So let's unpack those 4 macro trends that are practically guaranteed to happen.
The first pillar the source identifies is AI sovereignty. Governments are finally waking up to the fact that AI isn't just, another software product.
Right, they're treating it like electricity or the internet in the early days. It's a fundamental source of geopolitical power.
Exactly. Nations aren't going to let private tech companies dictate the future of global intelligence.
Which we're already seeing, right? Like the U.S. has the Cheat GPS Act pouring billions into domestic manufacturing. Japan has the Rapidus Project. The EU has their AI Act.
Yeah, they all want physical and legal control over the infrastructure. Which drives the second pillar perfectly, infrastructure improvement.
Because the hardware race is just staggering right now.
It really is. AI compute power is doubling roughly every 1.9 years. It's this massive arms race.
But wait, I have to stop you there. Because if you look at the costs, training these foundation models has gone up like 2,400 times since 2016.
It's a massive spike, yeah.
So if it costs billions of dollars and sucks up entire regional power grids, isn't this just a giant unsustainable bubble waiting to pop?
Well, it looks exactly like a bubble if you only look at the upfront price tag.
Yeah.
But you really have to separate the fixed costs from the marginal costs here.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the fixed costs building the sprawling data centers, running the initial training, those are astronomically high. But the unit economics are actually improving.
You mean the cost per token?
Exactly. The energy and computing power required to process a single piece of data is plummeting. The tech is getting radically more efficient at the micro level.
Got it. But even so, the macro environment has changed, which is our third pillar. Capital is no longer free.
Right. The era of 0% interest rates is totally over.
So the days of venture capitalists writing blank checks to any startup with AI in their pitch deck are ending.
Because money actually costs money to borrow now. Companies have to prove actual return on investment. The old Silicon Valley build it and they will come mantra is dead.
That makes total sense. So geopolitical stakes are massive. Infrastructure is booming. Cheap money is gone. What's the fourth known?
AI safety. And look, despite all the doomsday fears about rogue algorithms, our basic human preservation instincts are going to kick in.
Like with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Exactly like that. We'll see global governance emerge. It won't be perfect, but the collective instinct to put a kill switch on existential threats will drive regulation.
Okay, so that's our solid foundation. But here's where the strategy gets really difficult and honestly really fascinating.
The forks in the river.
Right. The known unknowns. What are the massive pivot points that will dictate how AI actually integrates into our daily lives?
Well, the first major polarity is trust. Are everyday people actually going to trust these systems?
I mean, between the AI hallucinations, deep fakes, and the, mental health impacts, a public backlash seems super plausible.
It really does. And public trust isn't global. The source points out that Chinese citizens currently trust and embrace AI at roughly twice the rate of Americans.
Wow, twice the rate.
Yeah. And from a business strategy perspective, that trust gap is huge because data is the fuel of the AI era. If your market doesn't trust AI, they'll demand privacy lockdowns.
Which completely chokes off your supply of training data.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second massive polarity. Augmentation versus automation.
Oh, this is the one that keeps everyone awake at night. Are companies just going to use AI to replace workers and cut payroll?
Right. What economist Eric Brynjolfsson calls the Turing trap. Just using brilliant tech to mimic human tasks slightly cheaper.
Versus using AI to give your existing workers superpowers.
Yes. And to understand the augmentation side, you have to think about Steve Jobs' famous 1990 quote, comparing computers to a bicycle of the mind.
Oh, I love that concept. Because humans aren't the most physically efficient animals, but you put a human on a bicycle and they blow a condor out of the water.
Exactly. Humans are tool builders. AI shouldn't just be a replacement worker, it should amplify human efficiency.
And the data actually backs this up. The source mentions a modern study on AI in customer service. It gave a 14% overall productivity gain.
Which is solid on its own.
But the staggering part was that it gave a 34% productivity boost to the least experienced workers.
It leveled the playing field by instantly giving novices access to the hard-earned knowledge of veteran employees.
But, are we sure we aren't just falling into the solo productivity paradox again?
Oh, from the 1980s.
Yeah, where computers were everywhere except in the productivity statistics. Companies spent billions, but global output barely moved because they just digitized their bad habits.
Right, they didn't change how the work was actually done, and that is the ultimate risk of the Turing trap.
So are we just spending billions on AI without actually moving the needle?
Well, the source introduces the augmentation automation paradox to answer that. Basically, automation frees up human time. That free time enables human augmentation.
Like focusing on strategy and complex problem solving.
Exactly. And then that augmented human goes back and refines the automation to be even better.
So the winners won't just fire their staff, they'll upskill them in what the source calls hub skills. Adaptability, analytical thinking, learning how to learn.
Precisely. But how much those skills are valued heavily depends on our final polarity, the role of big tech.
Will a few hyperscalers control everything, or will open source models like Meta's Llama or DeepSeek commoditize AI?
Right. And depending on how these polarities flip, whether big tech hoards power, whether we trust the systems, we get drastically different realities.
So let's stress test the future. The source gives these incredibly detailed, plausible scenarios for 2030.
Let's look at scenario 1, the AI-run ecosystem. This is a world with low concentration of big tech power, so open source one, and high public trust.
In this world, we follow a woman named Corinne. She has unexplained fatigue, but instead of waiting 3 weeks for a doctor, she uses an AI symptom checker on her phone.
Which instantly coordinates with a background service analyzing her smartphone's passive motion data.
Right. And all of this is seamlessly orchestrated by her health insurance AI. It's this connected constellation of hyper-specialized microservices.
They all talk to each other. A specialized pathology AI delivers a preliminary diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, which a human neurologist then validates using their augmented hub skills.
So in that scenario, your business's competitive moat is all about interoperability and having the best hyper-niche data.
Exactly. But then there's the dark mirror to that. Scenario 2, digital feudalism.
This is high concentration of big tech and very low public trust.
Right. Here we meet Pho Lin, a driver in Vietnam. He asks his AI assistant for a small business loan and is instantly denied.
Because an opaque algorithm controlled by a massive hyperscaler placed him in a high-risk bucket. And the local banks can't even tell him why.
Because they don't own their risk models anymore. The compliance costs are so astronomical that local banks are reduced to mere storefronts for big tech's models.
It's exactly like running a business inside a massive shopping mall.
You know what I mean?
Like, the landlord doesn't just charge you rent. They own the cash registers, they control the security, and they use your data to dictate your prices. You're completely captive.
That is exactly what digital feudalism looks like. Margins are completely squeezed.
So, as a listener, which world is your industry heading toward? Are you building a moat that can survive being squeezed by a big tech gatekeeper?
It's a tough question. And it brings us to Monday morning at 8 a.m. How do you practically apply this to your P&L tomorrow?
Yeah, because it's fun to philosophize, but we have payroll to meet.
Well, you have to constantly reevaluate your value chain. You cannot assume the way you make money today is the way you'll make it in 5 years.
The Intel dilemma from the source is perfect for this.
Yeah.
For decades, Intel dominated because they designed the chips and owned the manufacturing factories.
But then the underlying economics shifted. The cost to build a single chip plant ballooned to like $20 billion.
Capital expenditure was just a crushing barrier.
Exactly. And specialized players split the market. NVIDIA focused purely on design, and TSMC focused purely on manufacturing. Intel lost its dominance because the value chain shifted.
But if I'm a business leader, my core business is making money today. Why should I divert my scarce resources into speculative AI options? Isn't that a distraction?
That is the classic innovator's dilemma. To survive, the source says you need an engine 2.
Engine 2. Like Google, right?
Yeah, Google makes massive profits from people clicking blue links. That's engine 1. But AI answer engines threaten that entirely.
So if they only focus on protecting their cash cow, they get disrupted.
Exactly. You have to build a portfolio of real options. Small, highly calculated side bets.
The Ecolab example is so brilliant for this. They started in industrial cleaning. Nothing to do with tech.
Right. But they used real options to slowly build an engine 2 in water purification.
Because water is a vital resource. And now AI data centers require massive amounts of water cooling.
So suddenly, Ecolab is perfectly positioned for a multi-billion-dollar windfall. They became anti-fragile.
That perfectly ties everything together. We started with designing a house for a hurricane. We poured the foundation with those known sovereignty, infrastructure, costly capital, and safety.
And we explored the unpredictable polarities of public trust and big tech monopolies.
Right. You can't perfectly predict the future, but you can prepare for the plausible. You can choose to use AI as a bicycle of the mind instead of falling into the Turing trap.
It requires deep imagination. You really have to be willing to ask the difficult what-ifs about your own irrelevance.
Which actually leads us to a final provocative thought. There's a brief mention in the text about how AI might rewire our brains over time.
Yeah, if we spend the next 10 years outsourcing our complex problem-solving and our reasoning to AI agents, do human intuition and gut instinct just become vestigial traits?
Like, do we slowly lose them?
Exactly. Or, in a world where everyone has access to the exact same perfect machine-generated logic, does human imagination become the single rarest, most highly valued economic asset on the planet?
Wow, that is definitely something to think about. Take those scenarios into your next meeting and start asking those what-ifs, because the ones who prepare for the plausible are the ones who survive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.